Do you want to maximize your success with NCUA? Join Mark Treichel as he shares with you the insider's view on passing your exam with flying colors. The With Flying Colors podcast is sponsored by Credit Union Exam Solutions by Mark Treichel. If you would like to work directly with the Credit Union Exam Solutions team and receive support to optimize your results with NCUA so you save time and money, visit us at marktreichel.com to find out more.
Hey everyone, this is Mark Treichel with another episode of With Flying Colors. Welcome to January. I'm recording this on January 14th. It may sound a touch bit different because I don't have my normal microphone with me, and that's because I traveled to visit my new granddaughter, who was born a couple days ago, a couple of weeks early. So a little shift in our plans here, and accordingly, this is going to be a different podcast than I thought I was going to be launching today. But NCUA keeps me busy with the things that they've got going on. Credit unions, there's a lot of things in the news. So this is going to be an update on what's happening at the NCUA board this Thursday, which I will follow up on after it actually occurs. Discussion about what's going on in Navy in particular, who's getting beat up by the Senate, and what might happen relative to NCUA's priority letter. First off, Navy had a CNN article that came out about their challenges with the denial rates with minorities. And both sides of the Senate wrote their own letters, but the one signed by Sherrod Brown, the Democratic side, that went to HUD and it went to CFPB, basically concludes that as the regulators with primary responsibility for enforcing ECOA and the Fair Housing Act, we ask that you thoroughly review Navy Federal's mortgage lending practices and outcome for compliance with all federal fair housing and fair lending laws and regulations. Navy Federal's members have made countless sacrifices in their service to our country. We must do all we can to ensure illegal barriers are not placed on their path to home ownership. Thank you for your prompt attention to this issue. I would expect there's going to be some hearings on this. I would expect both those agencies will go into this large credit union, which once they arrive, CFPB in particular, they stay for quite a while. And I think there will be tentacles, ramifications to this. I also think that if you've listened to me historically here, this is our third season. I've talked a lot about how Chairman Todd Harper is a big champion of consumer compliance, big champion of consumer rights. And I can only think, this is my opinion only, that this occurrence is only going to have him refocus more resources on this. I think the government in general the agencies in general are going to be tasked and asked to put a focus on this. Last year, we had Silicon Valley Bank, we had liquidity issues, et cetera, and that became a focus. There's no doubt this type of news is going to increase the focus in this arena. If that means more fair lending exams, if that means at mid-year of next year, they'll add fair lending examiners. Todd now has his second Democratic vote, which I'll get to here shortly about what's coming up on their agenda. So this news, public news about Navy, is going to have an impact. Obviously, when those folks go into Navy, we won't hear those specifics because that's confidential, but it's going to trickle down. It's going to trickle down. How it trickles down will remain to be seen. But Chairman Harper is now positioned to have it trickle down within the walls of NCUA any way he sees fit. And again, that's always been one of his focal points, and we're about to see where he wants to take this. So that's number one. Number two, the NCUA board agenda. Bear with me. Go to their website. You got to click by the way, to get to the NCUA board agenda, you click news, you click board meeting agendas and results, and you scroll down to the current meeting. And I scroll down too far because it's a new year. And there are two items on the agenda. The first item is the NCUA's 2024 to 2026 Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Accessibility Strategic Plan. The second item is NCUA's 2024 Annual Performance Plan. I'm going to speak more to the annual performance plan, but that links in my mind to the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Strategic Plan. Now, We have a new board member. NCUA has a new board member, Tanya Otsuka, actually came from Sherrod Brown's staff or the banking committee staff over there. Imagine that. So Sherrod Brown writes a letter to a large credit union. And oh, by the way, we have a board member that's brand new that knows how, more than anybody, how the banking committee works over there. This is going to be an interesting year as it relates to that whole topic. But I digress. So the annual performance plan is on the docket. And one thing is, if you listen to me, one thing I'll do is a word search. So I looked at the 2023 annual performance plan, which was approved a year ago. And I looked at some keywords. And I looked up climate, I looked up diversity, minority, inclusion, I looked up safe, sound, consumers, and compliance. So those keywords are words that are prevalent at some level in the 2023 report. The word of those that's there the most is consumer, which is there 60 times. Second most is sound, which is 35, safe, 26 times, compliance, 21 times, and then diversity, minority, and inclusion, individually, those words, inclusion 9 times, minority 8 times, diversity 7 times, and climate only 5 times. So that was issued with a board that was 2 Republicans, 1 Democrat. I'm anticipating some shift in how many words, and words have meaning, how much of the paper, how much of the PDF is focused on particular areas. So here's my predictions on what will happen in the annual report on the usage of these words. I think 3 of the words or the word categories will likely go up. I think climate change is going to have a bigger presence because from what I heard, there was efforts to kind of keep that minimalized in 2023. And I believe Chairman Harper will have more discussion on climate change, whether it goes from 5 to 10 words, 5 to 15 words, or only 5 to 7 words, or it's just the paragraphs. There's more talking about it there and with some measurable things that they're trying to achieve. And in those regards, there's other agencies out there that have put some templates out, and we can anticipate if we looked at those, what those details might be. But climate change, I believe, is going to go up. I think diversity, minority, and inclusion will go up again. Why? Because the Democratic side of politicians tends to push this more than the Republican side. So 7, 8, and 9 words, will that double to 14, 16, and 18? I don't know, but I'm expecting a bigger footprint on that topic in the annual report. Excuse me, in the annual performance plan. Next category, safe and sound. I think that's going to probably tread water, going to be about the same. Consumers at 60, maybe up a little bit, about the same, but I'm expecting compliance to go up from 21 to some number closer to what safety and sound is. Now, if you've listened to my other podcast, Chairman Harper believes that those 2 topics can go hand in hand. I'm more of yes, consumer compliance can lead to safety and soundness issues, but they are 2 distinct disciplines. They are 2 distinct types of people at NCUA. They're 2 distinct types of people in credit unions. Yes, there can be some overlap, but I think there will be more emphasis on consumer compliance at NCUA this year than last, and in 2025 more than 2024. Why? Because the budget was approved by 2 Republicans and 1 Democrat. And when we get to the mid-year in July and we get to November or December when they approve the next budget, I think there will just be a continued emphasis here, and that's going to have a footprint on what you need to do at your credit unions. All right, so the other item I wanted to mention is last year, and typically every year, this is the week that NCUA comes out with their annual supervisory priority letter to credit unions. My favorite credit union letter of the year because it says what they're going to be looking at when they come in. Now, in the past, I've talked about how if everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. Sometimes they've had 13 priorities. They've gotten wise recently and reduced that to 6, although it wasn't really 6 because they had other considerations at the bottom that they threw in. So it raised it up to 7 or 8. But it was a leaner, more focused letter last year, which was good because there are real issues out there that needed to be addressed. So as a reminder, last year, the priorities 2023 in order were interest rate risk number 1, liquidity risk number 2, credit risk number 3, fraud number 4, cybersecurity number 5, Consumer Financial Protection number 6, albeit it had the most number of words donated to it or assigned to it. While Consumer Financial Protection was 6th, it was really number 1 in words. So its placement was out of order as far as how much bandwidth NCUA gave to it. Now, the other considerations were succession planning and climate change. And again, succession planning, I predict that that rule will be coming out at some juncture. As a reminder, it only applies to federal credit unions, the proposed rule. And that proposed rule didn't get a second vote because Chairman Harper didn't have a second vote. The other board members wanted to treat it as guidance, which is how I would do it. But, there's different ways to do it. And I'm expecting that will hit the NCUA board agenda now that Chairman Harper has a second Democratic vote. All right, so that was 2023. What do I think is going to happen for 2024? Of those that I mentioned, I think fraud potentially could fall out. They bring that up every 2 or 3 years. But that's one that is an occasional priority. They have some priorities that are always there. Consumer compliance is always there. Cybersecurity is always there. So here's my prediction of the order in which these items will be listed in the letter to credit unions. Going out on a limb, I think consumer financial protection is going to be number 1. I think credit risk will be number 2, and or some focus on commercial credit risk in particular. I think we're seeing trends in the economy, trends in examinations, and trends in credit unions where NCUA has a bit more concern about commercial loans than other types of loans right now. So number 1, consumer financial protection. Number 2, credit, which might be also defined separately as commercial loans. Number 3, interest rate risk. So it falls from number 1 to number 3. That could be really anywhere in here because it's still a big issue in exams. It's still a big issue in credit unions. Liquidity, I think, is going to fall to 4 from number 2. Cybersecurity, hey, I got that. I got one of them staying in the same place. So cybersecurity was 5th. I have that staying 5th. I think succession planning is going to move from the other into the actual priorities, and I think that will be number 6. And if it's not number 6, it's because climate change might be number 6. So those are my thoughts relative to that. Now, one that wasn't mentioned at all last year, which we're seeing talked about a lot at credit unions and by NCUA, is concentration risk. That's an occasional priority that shows up. So I'm going to predict there will be 8 priorities and concentration risk will be added. And in summary, climate goes from other to an actual priority, succession planning becomes a priority, and fraud falls off the letter this year. That's my take on NCUA's letter to credit unions. I'm expecting it'll come out this week. And once it comes out, I'm going to have my 3rd annual discussion of that letter, the words that are there, because again, words have meaning, and I'll have some of my team members on it with me. Historically, I've had Steve Farr and Todd Miller, and I'm looking forward to having a call with them to discuss that. Now, lastly, I've got this list in my book of things I'm planning to do for the podcast so that when I get the idea, I don't lose it. I track it here in my little notebook. So here's some topics I've got on the radar for with flying colors. Who reviews your exam and what that means is a separate podcast that'll be coming down the road. The true cost of a camel downgrade, another podcast, a separate one on emergency mergers and potentially expanding into mergers. What is an emergency merger, what it means to have an emergency merger, why it's a good thing, why they're not that frequent, et cetera, et cetera. Organizational reviews. That's a trend in NCUA where document resolutions require organizational reviews. I'm going to talk about what that means for the credit union that gets that document resolution. A separate podcast on letters of understanding and agreements, a separate podcast on cease and desist orders, a topic where I will be interviewing a board member at a credit union about succession planning for board members, getting and training board members, et cetera, et cetera. A podcast on how to avoid getting a document resolution. And yeah, that's my list as of today. So all of those still have yet to be recorded, but you can expect to see most or all of them in the quarter to come or thereabouts. All right, that's it. I'm going to go hold my baby granddaughter for the second time. I now have 2 granddaughters. I had 2 daughters. So this is exciting news here for the Treichel family. And I'm wishing you and yours a great Martin Luther King holiday. That's it. Thank you for listening. I hope you'll listen again soon. Mark Treichel signing off with flying colors.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of With Flying Colors. Subscribe on your favorite podcast app to hear future episodes where subject matter experts of all varieties will provide tips on how to achieve success with NCUA. If you would like to learn more about how we assist credit unions, check out our services at marktreichel.com.